About half a year after Marvel canceled the Mila Manara Spider-Woman cover, there was another variant cover controversy, this time for Raphael Albuquerque's Batgirl number 41. What was the big deal about this? Why did people get upset? And why is this one potentially a little bit more alarming than the other? Hey everybody, this is Perch. I'm going to get with the facts first and the commentary. So you may remember this back in 2015 March, about I guess a little bit longer than that, less than a year after the infamous Mila Manara Spider-Woman cover controversy, and this is where Mila Manara was hired to come into Marvel and do art in his style, and he drew Spider-Woman in a skin tight or just painted skin costume. It was tight skin tight. There you go. And her butt was up in the air, and it got people really mad. And then the cover got canceled, and then he got canceled, kind of out of the company at that point. And then victory, right, for people who didn't want to see Mila Manara draw what Mila Manara draws. Anyway, so then a little while later, they're doing a variant cover series for DC, and it was kind of, as I recall, it's kind of like classic moments of villainy, I believe, was the theme of the variant covers. Going on is like the characters are in danger. That was the idea. Yeah, that was exactly it. The villains had won or done something evil. So Batgirl number 41 has a cover, and it's got pretty iconic Raphael Albuquerque scene from somewhat reminiscent of The Killing Joke. It was the Joker, and he's basically got Batgirl trapped. He's got his arm around her. He's holding a gun, and he's painted a little kind of a red bloody smile on her, and she looks terrified. And again, it was the theme of these covers. These cover scheme. The cover themes were, villains are winning kind of idea. And like I said, it was an homage to The Killing Joke in one direction. Batgirl was, it's her current costume and everything else from 2015, but the Joker was dressed in a kind of his hat that a lot of people remember from Killing Joke. So what happened was there was a big controversy. People got mad, and the Mary Sue wrote some articles, and this is like victimization, and people got really mad that it's the Joker doing something wrong, and this is painting her in a bad light. And the argument that was used was, this has nothing to do with the current comic. The tone of the comic at the time, it was a more light-hearted, version of the comic. And in particular, Cameron Stewart, just saying, you might have some current things going on with him, but we'll just say, and Brendan Fitcher and Babstar, but really Cameron Stewart, very loudly objected and made a lot of very public tweets about they didn't approve of this cover. It was ridiculous. It was wrong, and it was victimizing women. Other thing, again, pretty ironic. Just saying that Mr. Stewart was taking that approach now in hindsight, but they basically objected, and some noise grew, and eventually Raphael Albuquerque took the step of saying, you know what, pull the cover. I don't want it out there anymore. I don't want to be associated with this, and so forget it. And so he asked DC to cover it. Now, we don't know behind the scenes if DC kind of called up Raphael Albuquerque and like, hey, what do you think here? Who knows? I mean, at the end of the day, it is the publisher's decision to make these choices. It's not like the artist just gets to kind of choose what gets done and where. But it was a good, I think, PR save face. And since a DC could say, yeah, we heard the controversy. We weren't sure, but then the artist himself said, get rid of it. And so we did. And then they did. And so the cover went away. And then a counter controversy came up with petitions about this is censorship and it's a variant cover. What's the big deal? And why can't art be evil? And isn't the Joker evil? What's the deal here? So that was kind of the way it all went down. Now, those are kind of the facts. Now, your view of this, there's a lot of ways to come at it. A lot of people had different opinions of, this looks dark and sinister and it's wrong, or this is you shouldn't show Batgirl as a younger character being kind of preyed upon by a villain, or it's censorship or whatever. Lots of different ways you can take this. The outcome, or now for the commentary a little bit. My stand on this, and why I think it's actually more worrisome, is the argument got into pretty quickly some comments about the comic itself, The Killing Joke. And The Killing Joke was an Alan Moore comic back in the 80s, and it was a dark, dark comic. I mean, it was basically the idea that, the theme of it was Batman is just one bad day away from being the Joker, and that, good people can be run mad. And it's brutal. The Joker basically shows up at Barbara Gordon's apartment. He shoots her, and then he may or may not, Alan Moore has said not, but it's hard to read the comic and view it another way, may have basically raped her, or at least assaulted her sexually. There is that sense that maybe that went on. It's a dark story. Then Commissioner Gordon is given photos of her bloody and whatever else happened there, and it tries to, he comes close to being driven mad, and it's a really, really ugly story of a villain being a villain. And there's been a number of comments over the years that this book should go out of print. It's wrong. It goes too far, and everything else. And so this cover gets into that too. And there became a lot of comments about maybe it's time we erase this part of comic history. It's dark. It's ugly. It has no place in comics. And to that, I think my personal view is villains are villains. They're villains for a reason. I don't think you can have a villain that is, has boundaries. Some will. I think every villain's got a different take and a different part to their personality. But I think if you come into it and you say, okay, well, we're going to have villains, but the villains can't be too bad. They can be bad, but they can't do these kinds of things. Then I think that's a strange villain. In a world where we've got, people with superpowers who can fly to other planets and power rings and super speed and travel forward and back through time and everything else, it seems a little weird that we're going to say the villains, won't step over a line of villainy. Now, don't get me wrong here. I think, if suddenly a bunch of comics come out and the villains are just doing despicable things on every page, it's like reading a snuff film, and I don't want to do that. I have no interest in that. But I think that's part of writing a good story, that you're getting something complex, something evil, and not that you're putting some kind of self-imposed restrictions on what, how bad villains can be. That just seems strange. So I find that whole topic weird. I also do think this is a variant cover. The entire theme of the variant covers, which people seem to miss, was that the villains were kind of overcoming the heroes. And so that also seems strange. It's like, nobody was upset. There's several covers in this line of the heroes just getting, totally destroyed. As I recall, there were some, where some superheroes were being murdered, basically. And this one, if you look at the act, Joker's clearly got, it clearly doesn't look like a good situation for Batgirl, but some of the other covers had the heroes in much worse, i.e. being murdered states. In fact, and I'll have to go back and look at it. As I recall, the Wonder Woman cover had her in a much worse state. She didn't look victimized, but she looked like she was about to be killed, which I think is a different form. That is kind of being victimized. Anyway, I don't know. I think that this was a weird line to draw, and I think it was kind of a warning sign for comics and where the culture war was going to go. That this, not only was it, well, we can't have this because it doesn't represent the comic. Well, none of the covers were really representing the current comic. None of them were. The whole premise, and that's a weird argument to make anyway. When Marvel does the Run the Jewels cover, or there's a new comic out on Wednesday cover, that doesn't have anything to do with the comic. When they're celebrating the X-Men, they're doing X-Men covers on, Ghost Rider and Hulk. That it's completely different characters. So I think that argument really doesn't hold up and just silly. But it was a warning sign that we were going to start to want to erase stories in the past. And I think that's the dangerous part. That's the part where I'm like, I don't like all comic stories, of course. I'm not the biggest fan of The Killing Joke. I don't think it's that amazing of a story. I think it's been kind of blown up over the years, and there are aspects of it that I feel like I'm watching a snuff film, which is it's not terribly enjoyable. But it's none of my business whether other people like it or not, and I don't think it's because I don't like it, we should go back in time and try and erase it from comics history. I think that's shooting yourself in the foot. And all things considered, I mean, again, we have these comics where, Cheetah is trying to choke or hang Wonder Woman to death with her noose. We have, characters being trying to run through by spears. We have, Red Lanterns vomiting blood and melting people. We have planets being blown up. So the idea that this one is somehow worse, that's strange to me. So I think this cover, I mean, the Mila Manara, you can kind of see it coming. I mean, Marvel is pushing the boundaries on some of this stuff, and clearly they didn't know what they were in for. And so you have a female-led title, and you have her butt up in the air, and you're like, okay, well, the U.S. Western comics have always had this strange sensibility about eroticism and that kind of stuff. And I think it was fine. But I can see that one at least had a little bit more logic to why people go after it. This one was we can't show a female character in a dangerous situation, but yet even in Cameron Stewart, again, I still crack up given today's events, given Cameron Stewart's run. I mean, she was at various times, going to be killed. She was in mortal danger at various times. So I just don't quite get it. But anyway, what do you think? Was this cover over the line? Terrible? Easy to ignore? And as always, I'm always interested in hearing the people that have the opposite opinion of me. And you can look for proof. I'm not going to come in and bash you in the comments or anything. I honestly want to hear your opinion. So throw it in there and let me hear your thoughts. It helps educate me. I love it. So please do that. So subscribe, follow me on Twitter or Facebook at Comic Perch. And thanks for listening.